Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. My name is John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Today, our guest is Sandy Lighterman, Film and Entertainment Commissioner for the Miami-Dade County Office of Film and Entertainment. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Sandy.
It's my pleasure, John.
I like to start each interview with kind of an origin story. So tell us how you got your start in the industry.
I was an actress first, actually, when I was very young. And, this is before I was even 10. I will tell you that by the time I was 11, I had decided that I did not want to be an actress anymore and that I wanted to be a director. So I decided to ask a lot of questions when I was on set. And I was that kid that kind of tugged on the gaffer's shirt and saying, "What are you doing?" And I actually learned from being on set as an actress and then actually being a production assistant. My mom would drop me off at sets. And I was the only kid on set. At that time, of course, insurance things are different now. But I was the only kid on set, and I asked a lot of questions. And I was actually taken under wing by someone by the name of Jeff Cohen, who actually said, "I'm going to teach you how to be a producer." And I went up the ranks from PA to assistant coordinating to actually production managing and producing within 2 years. This was all before I went to college. So I had really a first-hand understanding because someone actually was a mentor to me. And then I went to Syracuse University first, and I finished at University of Miami. I was already in the industry, and I was producing at that time mostly commercials that were going on down here, but then graduated to feature films and television series, eventually moved to Los Angeles, but have then moved back not that long after I was there, like within 2 years, because I actually wanted to make Miami, Los Angeles.
From there, how did you find your way to the Miami-Dade Office of Film and Entertainment?
Well, I was producing for about 30 years, and I not necessarily wanted to change, but my home life, I was a single mom, and my kids were getting into, one was getting into middle school, and I really needed to pay attention. And this industry, when you're on the freelance side, is very taxing on your relationships, including with your children. It's a tough industry on families. And I decided to take a break from the industry and pay attention to my kids because I knew it was important. Well, that break, after 6 months, I decided I did not want to go back into the industry, and everybody was shocked because I'd been doing this for so long. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to stick close to home. I wanted to somehow be connected, but I didn't know how. And about a year afterwards, I was lucky enough I could take a year off from my producing gigs and be a mom, and then a job came up under this position as a permit coordinator in this office, and the money wasn't great, but I could do it with my eyes closed, and I said, I'm going to do that. Not actually aspiring to be the film commissioner, but trying to figure out what my way was going to be.
So how long were you in that role of permit coordinator?
I was in the role 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years as a permit coordinator before I was elevated to this position, and it was a fortunate and unfortunate Jeff Peel, who was my predecessor, decided to retire. And during the time that I was here learning the ropes of government, he basically taught me along the way to sort of stand on my own 2 feet and not necessarily do his job, but to stand into a position that was more than a permit coordinator. And he literally said, "Tag, you're it." And the higher ups took a little bit of time for the higher ups to figure that out, but within a couple of months, I was basically him. I was then the commissioner.
So I'm sure it helped you in your initial role as permit coordinator and then now film commissioner to have so much field experience in the industry. Talk a little bit about why.
As a permit coordinator, as I said, I could do that with my eyes closed because I had, I and my, staff as, that were on the projects that I worked on always applied for permits. And I knew and I know what the challenges are on the other side, on the production side. So that understanding that and actually going through the process here in the county of understanding not necessarily the signing of a permit, but the developing of relationships with department directors and all the park managers and all of these people and actually going and meeting them and educating them about the industry. And I was given that opportunity from Jeff to be able to do that. That actually, those relationships translated when I came into this position already a level of respect and an understanding of the industry. And I think that in itself was very helpful. But it's also that, I can speak the language of producers. I can speak the language of coordinators and managers. And I actually, trained my staff to respond very quickly to any kind of request, because I understand what it is like on the other side. And I taught them to roll with the punches and understand when things have to change, and they have to change permits, and they have to re-coordinate a shoot for a production. So that's been very helpful. And in fact, the minute I ever speak to a producer and they're talking to me and they start explaining, and I say to them, I was a producer, they go, okay, you get it. And they don't have to go into a whole explanation. It's been very helpful. And there's another element of this. Since I was in the industry, I have a lot of relationships that were nurtured over those 30 years, and that helps me to bring in projects to Miami-Dade County.
Speaking of bringing projects to Miami-Dade County, besides the obvious things that everybody thinks of when you hear Miami, like beaches and palm trees, what do you think are some of the undervalued aspects of the locations in Miami-Dade County?
There are so many undervalued locations. Like two right off the bat that I can think of are decommissioned trash hills. One is paved and looks like a hill in, Mill America, and a lot of car commercials are filmed on that decommissioned hill. And there's also another decommissioned hill out down south that is filmed for Iran or Iraq or somewhere in the Middle East. We also have hidden natural waterfalls. We have lots of farm and agricultural areas that can double anywhere for anything in the Midwest for farming. And we also obviously have inner city, lots of inner city locales and vistas, i.e. Moonlight, that was filmed here.
Speaking of Moonlight, in late summer of 2016, those outside of South Florida started hearing a buzz about this independent film called Moonlight. After the Fall Film Festival circuit, the buzz got louder and eventually led to Moonlight being nominated for literally hundreds of awards, winning most of them, including 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Talk about Moonlight being filmed in Miami and the impact the success has had on South Florida.
The impact of Moonlight being filmed here, I must say that Barry Jenkins, the director, who came from Miami, who was born and raised in Miami, actually in Liberty Square, where a lot of Moonlight was shot, he demanded that that movie be shot in Miami because he wanted the feel of Miami, and he wanted to showcase Miami in a way that it hadn't been showcased before, and that means the inner city side of Miami. And that actually in itself, number one, the locations, and we were just speaking about inner city, the locations of the inner city and Liberty City were something that we immediately got phone calls on, because a lot of producers and location managers worldwide had no idea that we had that look here in Miami. But more so, what happened with the Moonlight and all of its awards and its accolades, and it got the attention of a lot of producers and directors. And we have had a resurgence of the indie films coming to film here, inquiring and looking to shoot here because of Moonlight. And that's obviously brought in a lot of economic development, a lot of money, a lot of jobs into our area.
So that's great that Moonlight not only brought great attention for the filmmaking capabilities of South Florida, but you talked about bringing additional projects to the area. In late 2017, Miami-Dade County launched a local grant program to entice projects to film in the county. Talk about that program and some of the early results that you've seen.
The program is something that I created with the help of Commissioner Sally Heyman and, of course, the mayor. And the program is, in my eyes, a big success. We weren't getting any independent films. We were getting very little or just pieces of television series. And so far that the program has actually brought in 2 feature films and a television series. So that's where we are and what's been completed. And coming up, we have 4 projects that are going to be filmed soon into hopefully the next year. So it's been a big success, and already at least $20 million of direct spend has come into this economy, and at least 150 positions have been hired in Miami-Dade County. And coming up, obviously, there's approximately another $20 to $30 million that are going to be spent just because of our program. To speak about the program and what the caveats are, the minimum spend in Miami-Dade County has to be $1 million. And in that $1 million, after you spend $1 million, you get a $100,000 grant. That does not mean that every million that you spend, you get $100,000. If you spend $1 million, you get $100,000, and if you spend $5 million, you get a $100,000 grant. But the caveats are pretty Miami-Dade County centric. You have to hire 50 Miami-Dade County residents that are non-background extras, that are main cast and crew. You have to shoot 70% of your project in Miami-Dade County. 80% of your vendors have to be Miami-Dade County vendors. You have to hire one student from one of the local universities. And you have to have some sort of sense of place of Miami in the project. It doesn't have to be the whole project, but there has to be a sense of Miami somewhere in the project. And after you film your project here and you give us the accompanying paperwork that proves all of those things, that's when you get the $100,000 grant.
So in addition to the grant program and some of the notoriety from other projects, you guys also, as a marketing and promotion tool, have an online movie and TV map tour. Talk about what that is and how people can find it to learn more.
That's very simple. They just have to go to our website, which is FilMiami, which is FilMiami.org, or the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau also has a link on their website because it helps actually our filmmakers. It also helps our local community and visitors. So our movie television map has over 100 projects, and probably the most popular projects we put on the map, just because if we put every project, we probably wouldn't be able to fit it on our map. And the locations that those projects were filmed, or at least one scene that was filmed in that area. And it's very easy. You go to the map and you pick a location, and it'll actually say you can either pick a project or a location. If you pick a project, it'll come up with a clip from that project, and it'll give the address where that one scene or what that was shot in that particular project. It's brought in a lot of accolades. We actually received a National Association of Counties top award for the map. It's very interactive, and we've gotten such positive feedback, not only from visitors, but also from producers say, I went onto your map and I saw there was a location I was looking for, and I found it on the map. So that really helped us. And it's a positive, feel-good thing, and we are very proud of it. I'm very proud of my staff that worked on it for a couple of years, and we're actually working on a music map that has like music venues, music videos, everything that has to do with music, and that's a multi-year project as well. We're not at all ready to launch because that's actually quite intensive. So we're really proud of our movie map and our upcoming music map.
Sandy, speaking of music, there has been a resurgence in filming music videos in South Florida. Talk about some of the recent projects that you guys have hosted, as well as what you attribute that resurgence to be from.
There are so many music videos, I almost can't even name them all. Top name artists are coming here. I think that there's a resurgence in music videos in our market because actually our vista has changed a lot. So our downtown area has changed. There's a lot of new, I want to say, locations. There are Wynwood area that is very artistic. So I think that's part of the resurgence. And I just think a lot of people, a lot of these artists feel Miami's a pretty cool place to come, and that's where they want to shoot their music video because they have a lot to say in where that music video is shot.
Whether it's your time with Miami-Dade County or even before then, before you got to the county job, what are some of the more memorable projects that you've been involved in?
There's a lot of memorable projects. Usually, when I'm recounting my past and people ask me about stories, so I talk about the ones that are most impactful. One of them I talk about often, and that is the first lottery commercial had alligators in it, and they sold the production company, or the ad agency actually sold the idea to the client, which was the Florida Lottery, that alligators were green because it was the greenbacks are coming and the alligators were coming out of the water. Well, if anybody knows that alligators aren't green, they're gray. So we were actually tasked with trying to find a paint to try to paint the alligators that with something non-toxic, Well, in the end, we never painted the alligators. They actually went into post and painted the alligators. But we were tasked with actually having to research that. So it's always a funny story to me. And most of my funny stories actually involve animals. I shipped an elephant to Cat Island in the Bahamas for a Magnum ice cream commercial. That was interesting. I had elephants on Crane Park Beach here for an Ashanti music video. So it seems like animals were in my forecast for my career. Also, I want to think about when I was coming here, especially when I was first in this position or just before and when I came to this position, Rock of Ages, the movie, was being filmed here. And that was a major undertaking. We had to take an entire long street in the semi-Wynwood section of town, and we had to it had to be converted to Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. And that was major in itself. And then on our side, there had to be a whole traffic reversal so that it looked like Sunset Boulevard in LA. So that was a major undertaking. And I'm going to say probably every explosion that Burn Notice had was a major undertaking.
Well, speaking of Burn Notice, I would be remiss if I didn't ask specifically about that series, since at one point it was the #1 cable television show. It still is the longest-running Florida-based television series in our state's history. So just talk a little bit about Burn Notice and the time working with that series.
Well, as I said, I'm telling you, every single week there was an explosion. It wasn't a little explosion. They were big explosions. So our fire department was always involved, or City of Miami Fire Department was always involved. And that was, that's a major coordinating of a lot of different departments, police, fire, and the public, so that everybody knows that this isn't a terrorist attack. So that was quite an interesting time. But we worked really closely with Burn Notice. We helped them find locations that were unique for them. We worked close with their location team. The producers, we worked closely with the producers. It was an absolute love fest for Burn Notice. We missed the TV series here. It brought so much economic impact. Each season, there were 7 seasons, it was at least $25 million of direct spend into the local economy. So it was huge. And you talk to anybody, especially of course in Miami, they'll ask me, when are we going to have another Burn Notice? So it is a very well-loved show from the past and to the present, because it's still in reruns. And we certainly would love to attract another Burn Notice here, and we're working on it.
And even today, as you mentioned, it's still in syndication. So I can turn on the TV almost every weekend during the day and find an episode of Burn Notice, and occasionally just sit there and watch and kind of reminisce about the good days when that series was on.
And the good days of TV series in the state of Florida.
The good old days of multiple episodic television series being shot in the state of Florida, and specifically even in South Florida. Recently, of course, you had Ballers shooting in South Florida for 2 seasons. Talk a little bit about that whole time, and first of all, what Ballers brought to South Florida, and then talk about some of the difficulties when they left.
Well, Ballers was a major, I want to say a major coup for us, because we had not had HBO shooting in the state, a very long time, if at all. So it was I want to say an effort, a strong effort, not that others aren't, but a very strong collaboration with HBO for them to bring them to Miami-Dade County to shoot Ballers. And we had, obviously, The Rock is the star of Ballers, and that brought so much intense publicity to our area, as well as the other stars. There was a lot of intense, positive, worldwide attention to Miami, especially if you looked at the opening of Ballers, which was shot beautifully. It was gorgeous, and it made us look just spectacular. From a tourism point of view, when I travel, people still talk about Ballers, and as they do Burn Notice. But more, they ask, why isn't it shot there anymore? And of course, I have to talk about the fact that they were spending a lot of money here. They were probably $35 million for each season, and besides that economic impact, of course, we just spoke about the tourism aspect of it. So it was a big draw for Miami-Dade County. When their tax credits dried up and they were looking for more, I want to say that myself and the film commissioner of Miami Beach, we were working really closely together to try to find any way to keep them here. I mean, we bent over backwards. We were trying to find some kind of private money to come into it. We were looking at public money. We were looking at any way to try to keep ballers here. And we tried and tried, and they just said, we have to bring it back to California. So they changed their storyline, and they brought it back to California. And it was, for us who had worked really hard on, getting them here and, keeping them happy here, which, it's a large cast and they had a lot of moving parts, was a big task for us. And we relished in the fact that we did well with that. But to lose them was even more heartbreaking because of the effort that was put in to actually try to save that show to keep it here. And, that obviously speaks about, the larger projects, the high-impact episodic television that brings in so many jobs, continuous jobs, high-paying jobs, and the economic impact it brings into an area, whether it be Miami-Dade County or anywhere else in the state of Florida. So, not having those projects, it's very hurtful financially to a community. And I wish our, the legislature and, hopefully our future governor will understand that this industry is so important, and it really does bring in high-paying jobs, and it's not, welfare. It comes to a community. That money comes directly into a community, whether it's Miami or whether it is in Cocoa Beach or in Live Oak, Florida. Honestly, it is money that comes in that would have never come in there before, and it's a lot of money, and it's jobs, and it's also obviously those beautiful pictures of, whether it be Miami or any other place in Florida, are up on the screen, whether it be the small screen or the big screen, and that is an impact for tourism. I have to tell you a funny story. I was in Manchester, England, a couple of years ago, and I was obviously there selling our wares, trying to bring in projects, because there was a conference there. I went into the hotel, and there you had to have your luggage taken up by a bellman. So the bellman didn't know me. He didn't know where I came from or anything. I didn't have a tan. I was from fairly light skin. And we get into the elevator, and it was a tall elevator, so we're going up floors, and it was a slow elevator. And I was asking him how he's doing. He says, I'm so happy because tomorrow I'm going on vacation. And I said, where are you going on vacation? And he goes, we're going to Miami. And I said, really? I said, why are you going to Miami? And he said, because, and he rolls up his sleeves, and there he was all inked up. And he and his wife were fans of the Miami Ink reality television series. And that's why they were coming here to Miami. So that gave me chills. It still gives me chills to this day. That's the type of tourism in the middle of nowhere. Manchester, England is not, right on the beaten path. And, these working class people were coming here to Miami to spend their hard-earned money because they saw us in a show. That's where I know tourism counts. That's where I know that our industry brings in tourists.
Exactly, and to emphasize some of the points about Ballers, as you had mentioned, it's upwards of $30 million or more per season that they spend. Each season they employ more than 2,500 cast and crew people from the state of Florida, more than 3,000 hotel or short-term rental room nights they take up. So the economic impact of a television series is enormous. And hopefully some of the efforts that you're doing with your local program will help some. And as you said, hopefully the future, we keep working on things, and hopefully we'll get back to those days of Ballers and Bloodline and Burn Notice and The Glades and Graceland all being shot here in the state of Florida.
I agree. And you talk about the all that economic impact and those jobs. Those jobs, interestingly, not only came from Miami-Dade County or South Florida. Those jobs were actually throughout the state. They brought in people from other parts of the state. So, even when something is shot in South Florida, it actually impacts positively for the rest of the state because people are hired, and also, vendors are used from other parts of the state as well, especially, on large television series. Obviously with my local incentive, it has to be very Miami-Dade County centric because I have to prove back to, the constituents that the money is being well spent and that it's coming back into this community. But on, big projects like that, it's certainly a statewide impact in a lot of ways.
Exactly. That'll do it for this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Thanks to Sandy Lighterman for joining us, and thank you for listening. To learn more about the Miami-Dade County Office of Film and Entertainment, go to FilMiami.org. That's FilMiami.org. so FilMiami.org. And of course, for more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org, and don't forget to check out our pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn.